Hi, Supermom. Elena here, your mommy tantrum specialist. And while majority of what I do is helping busy supermoms stop yelling at their kids, usually what happens in the next stage is that then the next energy drain comes up. And very often that next energy draining relationship is the couple, the marriage, your spouse, your partner. So, as always, I'm getting the inspiration for this podcast episode from my clients, from their real life stories. And it was so interesting because yesterday we had one of our group coaching calls. And we did a lot of hot seats. I don't know if 5, 6, or even 7. I would have to go back and count. I don't want to make it up. But we did a lot of hot seats, and in most of them, this came up in different shapes or forms. There was first a mom of a teenage girl who came in and she was complaining. My teenage daughter, she's actually already so smart. She's like 12. And she knows exactly what to do and how to talk to her daddy and how to blame everything on me. So then I'm the bad one and she goes to her father for support. Then there was a mom who was talking about her 7 years old daughter who's also having some like anger outbursts towards her. Then there was a mom of 2 boys, 7-year-old who doesn't want to brush teeth, and so because the father couldn't handle the drama that happens every night, he wanted to take over, and he basically told the boy, well, if you don't brush your teeth, there'll be no ice cream tomorrow, which she doesn't agree with, using bribes for things that should be non-negotiable, such as brushing teeth. So all she did, she zipped it up, she walked away, but she was bubbling with this. And she was just like, this is one of the examples where we don't see eye to eye in terms of our parenting. And then the cherry on top of the cake, as we say in the Czech Republic, that was my one-to-one session at the end of my night yesterday with the mom who, bless her husband. There's so much baggage in her husband's relationship with his mom. By the way, her mother-in-law was the inspiration for the mother-in-law podcast episode. If you're having troubles with your mother-in-law, like go back there, listen. This was amazing inspiration. So her husband actually is undermining her efforts, parenting efforts, not only towards the kids, but also towards his mom, like my client's mother-in-law. Okay. So this is just, it was written all over the place. How the heck do I communicate with my husband? What do I do when he's often doing the opposite of what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to convince him that my way is better, but for some reason he's not listening. He doesn't want to be listening, and we are having fights in front of the kids, which my clients know that should not be, that's not the ideal scenario, that's not the ideal case. But their questions were basically like, how do I get on the same page with my husband so that we are a team again, rather than fighting against each other or letting our kids push us against each other? Okay, so that's what we are going to dive in today. Does that sound like a good idea? Is that something that you have been struggling with as well? And first of all, I want to let you know, because I'm often, a majority of my clients is moms. So I work with only the one side, but it is an ideal case if the dads already understand, like, okay, it's on me as well. I do have some anger control issues, and I know I'm not the best parent myself either. So if they come and they want my help together as a couple, it's ideal. I'm not a couple therapist counselor. However, that being said, the methods that I'm using, which are, spoiler alert, all about healing your own past and baggage from like what your parents did to you without even knowing, and then increasing your level of stress resistance so that no matter how difficult your life can get and how stressful, how much weight and pressure you have to sustain on a daily basis, that your mental fitness level is higher than that, so that you don't lose your calm, you don't lose your patience. Because you know that in those moments when you lose your calm, then it's even worse. things even get more time, you are reacting in a less effective way, and it's just energy draining even more. Okay, so this is what I do. Ideally, you would do it together with your husband or partner or spouse. But life is not ideal, right? And does that mean that you have to give up all the efforts and just say, okay, he's going to screw up the kids anyway, so I don't have to do anything either? I had a mom who is divorced or separated. I don't remember now exactly. But she moved in closer to her own parents so that they can help her raise the kids. And her mom, the grandma, is now yelling at the kids. And so the mom, my client, was kind of like asking me, does that even make sense that I do this work? They spend so much time with grandma. She keeps yelling at them anyways. And I'm like, well, that's as if you would be asking me, my kids are drinking poison and like breathing poisonous smoke every day. And so does it at their grandma. So I will just keep making them breathe the same poisonous smoke at home as well. Like, you not only want to give them the space to recover from that, but also strengthen them enough so that no matter who else is impacting their lives and no matter what they are doing to them, that your kids are strong enough to and resilient enough to get over it without too much damage, right? This is why it makes sense, even if your husband is not on board, even if your own parents are not on board and they have different parenting styles, okay? You getting this help that I do inside of my Zen Supermom program, it will make the biggest difference for your kids, and it still makes sense, even if nobody else is on board. Okay, I just want to do that caveat. Now, back to your marriage, because we want to make sure that you get all the support you need and that your husband, your partner, is on the same page. Okay, so where do we even start? Because there's so much to unpack. So I will give you the same invitation as I gave to all of my clients yesterday, all of those ladies who showed up for that group call, and my one-to-one client who I had afterwards. Step number 1, when you have a calm moment, when you're not triggered, when you're not angry or mad because your husband just did something like, when you are calm, ask yourself the question, do I love him? Is he worth it? And do I love him unconditionally? Even with his mistakes, even with the things that drive me crazy, do I love him enough to keep trying and maybe to see what other ways there are for us to get on the same page? Do you love him enough? And it's a very important question, because if the answer is no, which might be the case, be really honest with yourself. If the answer is no, then my answer for you would be very different. Then let's not even try to go and fix it. Then what you're going to do is a damage control and see how you can protect your children from any kind of separation, but don't keep them in any kind of toxic dynamic relationship, because they see it. They see your marriage. Even if they don't hear or see your fights, they observe you guys, how you are doing together. That becomes their blueprint for relationships, for intimate relationships, for parents. That's who they will look for when they grow up. Okay. That's why you want to either correct whatever you can correct and align with your husband, or you want to go everybody your own way. Otherwise, you're risking your kids will end up repeating your relationship mistakes. And they will find exactly this kind of man or this kind of woman in their lives, and they will be recreating, reacting what you are doing with your husband. Okay? That's why this question and your answer is so important. Do I love him enough? Even despite his mistakes. Okay. Because, by the way, this is all about that unconditional love, right? You want to be loved unconditionally as well, right? You don't want your husband walk around with a long list of all the mistakes you've done in the last 5-10 years and reminding you every time they mess up, right? Would you appreciate that if somebody actually did that to you? No. So we don't want to keep the score either. You will look into how you can forgive. You don't have to forget. And whatever heavy dents, whatever heavy breakage there was in your relationship, do you honestly want to work on fixing it? And now I'm not even talking about your husband, like what he wants. Like, you realize first, what is it that you want? Okay. Because if there's a no, it's not worth it, and he lost my trust and he hurt me too much, then your next step should be, well, how can we get away from this? Okay. Don't stay for the kids. Now, I'm going to assume if you're continuing this podcast episode that your answer is yes. I'm mad with him. He drives me crazy at times. And yes, he should be helping around more. He should be more present and da-da-da-da-da. But yes, I love him enough and I want to make it work. How do I do that? So, if that's where you're at, then let's continue. If that's the case, then your next step will be, now you don't have to become your partner's therapist. You don't have to start digging in his childhood and why is it that he's holding these beliefs about parenting, but you will consider. You will realize that your parenting methods, even your own, are heavily based on what you went through as a child. Because everything you know about parenting was by observing others, right? And based on that, you made your decisions and your evaluations, and you either chose, okay, this is great, I want to do this when I'm the parent, and on the other hand, this is not so great, this is actually awful, and I want to avoid being like this. Isn't that true? Isn't that how you formed your parenting beliefs, most of them at the beginning? Then maybe later on when you realize that's not enough and you still keep repeating even your parents' mistakes, even though you want to avoid it, such as like yelling at your kids, guilty here. You knew it was wrong, you wanted to stop it and you couldn't. That's why you started reading all those smart parenting books and stuff. So on top of what you learned, what you observed as a kid, you might have added some like theories and other opinions. But the base, your automated reactions, your deep core values and beliefs about the relationship between parents and kids, it is going all the way back to your childhood. Okay? No brainer, right? Yes or yes? So knowing this and seeing those patterns in your own parenting approach, now have a look at your husband's parenting approach. It might be light years apart from you, but what does that tell you? Most likely that he grew up in a completely different environment with completely different kind of parents, right? This is what helps you with feeling the empathy and compassion for your husband, which is the opposite of you being mad at him and blaming him for making mistakes, right? Because when we get mad, it's like attacking, and you feel like you're right and he's wrong. When you start looking at it from the lens of, well, actually I can see how, without telling him these words, okay? But you thinking like, I can understand why you're being more cold or why you're being like different with the kids without judging. Because that's what most of your experience has been, right? As a kid. That's what his blueprint is for how parents should be. And the more anger there is in somebody's reactions, the more it's a sign of like the more pain they went through, especially as a kid, right? So this, if nothing else, is a reason for your compassion. The compassion for the child they once used to be. This is the place from which you can start having discussions about differences. Your unconditional love, empathy, and understanding. Not attacking, not when you're being triggered, not when you're angry because something just happened. You will wait for the right moment when you feel that unconditional love and empathy for your spouse first. Make sense? Okay. Only then you can start talking about what is actually the most important thing for us here. So first of all, you want to agree, yes, we need to be on the same page, because the kids, seeing that we undermine each other's authority or a viewpoint, the kids watching us then have a fight in front of them, that's not a healthy blueprint for them, like how relationships should be, right? Am I saying you should be avoiding conflict and faking anything? No. But you can agree to disagree in a civil, polite way in the moment, and agree to park that discussion for the time when you can be by yourself, out of sight, out of hearing of your kids, okay? Because they have very good ears to hear, especially what's not for them, right? Does that make sense? Okay. This can be one of your first agreements with your husband. When you talk behind those closed doors, when you have that space, you're both calm and not triggered. This could be one of your first things that you agree on. Let's do some safety words. Like when one of us gets triggered and we feel we don't agree with each other, what is the safe code? What is the safe word to postpone our fight or postpone clarifying our communication until we are by ourselves and can do it effectively? Okay, so that we show our kids a good example. We are not avoiding anything. We are not faking anything. We, in a civil way, agree to disagree and talk about it later. Okay, that's a good modeling. Not avoiding and not giving into the anger and the need to be right and prove that the other one is wrong for the sake of breaking the relationship and the blueprint for your kids. Okay, that's thing number one that you might want to agree on. The second thing will be, okay, so now that we agree it's important to be on the same page, what is that page? What are our values for our kids? What is the most important thing that we want to learn them about life, about themselves, about relationships? Okay, and this will be a wider discussion. This will be it might be changing, it might be moving, but it's very important to make sure that you are valuing the same things. Example. One of those clients from yesterday was complaining that her husband is OCD. He needs things super sparkling clean around the house every day, all the time, 24/7. So he's kind of demanding my client, his wife, to spend what she perceives as incredibly exhausting, impossible hours by cleaning. Okay. And she's been trying to communicate with him, like, this is nuts. Like, our house is clean enough. Like, why do you insist? Why do you make me feel I'm not good enough if I don't clean up to your standards, which are, by the way, insane? Like, what's wrong with you? Okay, which got very personal, very fast, and not effective. They've been having these discussions. They've been going around circles on and on for years now. So the perspective shift I offered to her was, as I told you at the beginning, well, do you love your husband enough, even regardless his OCD? Do you love him even with his cleanliness obsession OCD? Yes or no? It was a yes. So then the next step, can you see how his OCD and cleanliness obsession might be coming from his childhood trauma? Like, and she was like, oh yes, it's his mother. Like, she did that to him. I was like, yeah. And not even blaming your mother-in-law. Like, probably something happened. And I remember I used to date a guy like a long time ago. His mom was obsessed with cleanliness. And then when I get to know the family a bit better, I found out that their father, like the father of my boyfriend at the time, he died when he was just a small boy, but it was sudden. Like, suddenly he had some medical condition. They took him to the hospital. The next day he was dead. And everybody was just like, what the heck just happened? And his mom went completely like, she broke down, right? One day you have a beautiful family and you have your healthy husband with you. The next day he's in hospital and the day after he's gone. It was extremely traumatic shock for her. And so one of her coping mechanisms, I don't even know if she got any help with that, because most likely it was not too effective, because how she started handling it was by becoming completely obsessed with controlling every single detail of their lives. Everything had to be controllable, predictable, super clean. Like you could eat from the floor in their toilet. It was so clean. Okay. So I told my client, like, going back to the story of yesterday, where my client told me, like, yeah, my husband is OCD about cleaning. I didn't tell her this story, like my personal experience with something like this. But I told her, imagine and expect that something happened. People are not like this by nature. Something happened there. Why this cleanliness obsession was created as a coping mechanism. So rather than being mad for how screwed up your husband is and how your mother-in-law screwed him, think about having like compassion for the child in him who's still there, who's probably suffering because he sees his mother as suffering. And so he just wants to alleviate some of her pain by not triggering her too much, by being too messy and keeping things clean. So that's what he just took over as a belief and as a need to feel that his life is going to be okay. Because there was probably more peace and calm in his home when everything was super clean. Okay. So that was the perspective shift I offered to her, which changed how she felt about her husband's obsession. And then she was ready to go to the next step, which is, well, how do you keep healthy boundaries? You can still have compassion for your husband and where his patterns and beliefs are coming from without compromising your own boundaries and your own beliefs. Because the fact that she feels sorry for him, that he's like OCD about cleanliness, it doesn't mean that she needs to buy into it too and that she needs to become its victim. So then we started talking about, all right, so recognizing your husband's needs. Now, how can we as a team, let's have the discussion, how can we as a team make sure that your needs are fulfilled? Now, if you want me to fill it in and spend hours in cleaning, that's not okay with me, because my priority is our son. It's his education. It's him feeling loved and feeling like his mom has enough time for him. If I spend additional 3 hours a day cleaning, I will have no time for our son, which in result will give him the impression that a clean house is more important than loving arms, which is, by the way, exactly how you grew up. And I don't want our son to grow up the same way, right? So again, to that next step, getting clarity on your values. They might be different. Your beliefs, your background is different than your husband's. But where is it that it's the trauma strategy, like coping mechanism, survival mechanism? And what is it that are your healthy, like values for your child? You need to be able to balance it off and mitigate the result of your childhood patterns and traumas. Does that make sense? Okay. And I know I realized I used an example about cleaning, but it has an impact on your parenting, on your family as well. So I hope you're able to start drawing some parallels, that you're able to start shifting your perspective about how you think about your husband and where his beliefs and his parenting strategies are coming from, and that it shows you what steps you should be taking. So to sum it up, first of all, do you love him enough, even despite his mistakes and childhood traumas? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, empathize, see the hurt child behind any ineffective parenting strategy or need. And then third, start setting up the boundaries even before the boundaries. Number 3 was the values. Get on the same page in terms of the values. So what is the most important thing you want to teach your kids together? Okay. Is it the clean house, or is it I love you unconditionally and I have enough time for you? Okay. Then once you have those priorities and values clear, then you set up your boundaries as well around it. Like, yes, we agree you want the house clean, and we, both of us, we want to have enough time for our son. So then, what are the options? It's not an option for me to spend additional 3 hours cleaning. So then, do you want to hire a cleaner? Do you want to come back earlier from work every day, 3 hours, so that you can do your cleaning? Like, my dear, we are team players here. Let's think about it together. How is it that we can make it happen together? Okay. This is where the fun starts. Anytime you get triggered, notice those are your own stories about you feeling personally attacked, you feeling rejected, you feeling not understood, not good enough, that the other person is trying to make you feel wrong. So whenever you catch those voices in your head, whenever you feel hurt, shift the perspective. It's not about you. It's most likely the other person's trauma talking. In this case, in this example, it's your husband's trauma. Okay? Most likely he's the one who feels attacked, and that's why he's fighting back. Okay? So what is the best way to diffuse it? I talk about it a lot in that mother-in-law podcast episode. If you want the brief summary of it, let it drop. Don't take it personally. You can set your boundaries and tell somebody it's not okay for you to talk to me this way, and let's continue the discussion when we are both calm, because anything we just say beyond this point is going to hurt us. So set the boundaries, but let it drop. Please know that whatever comes out of somebody's mouth in a heated moment, more than about you, it has a lot to do about them. They are just showing where they have been hurt and where they feel like they are lacking. Okay? So, I hope this makes sense. I hope you started seeing some opportunities for how you can shift in the conversations with your husband. Because the reason why this is worth the pain and the struggle and the effort that you are about to put in it is your kids, right? They do see everything. They hear everything. More than what you do, they watch how you behave with your husband. This is becoming the blueprint for all of their future relationships. So do your best to be the best example that they can have. And I know you're already doing your best, and I'm hoping that you can do even better, that you got additional aha moments, maybe why some of these strategies you've been trying to use so far, why it didn't help. So if you got any of these aha moments, I would love to hear from you. You have my email address usually around wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. I would love to hear from you. And whenever you're ready to dive in deeper and get rid of whatever baggage you've been carrying that's been holding you back from your childhood, and to increase your level of mental fitness, then reach out, find me, and let's check if you would be a good fit for the Zen Supermom program. So I'm wishing you a great, peaceful day, and my wish for you and your husband is that you manage to make it work. And I don't want to say go back to where you started when you were first dating and those first great stages of being in love. There's no going back. So also, if you're daydreaming and if you're sad about having lost those feelings and that part of you and that part of your relationship, notice this is also the blah blah in your head. None of us is ever going back to what we used to be. The only way is forward. So where is it that you want your relationship to grow into? What is your vision for your relationship? And how can you, on your part, how can you show up so that that relationship starts feeding both of you, starts nourishing you again, starts giving you energy rather than draining it? So I'm wishing you best of luck with this. Look forward to hearing from you. And take care, Supermom. Bye.